So let us now proceed to the next classification of costs. The costs in relation to the volume of product or behavior. It consists of variable costs, fixed costs, and mixed costs. So we first discuss variable cost. It is a cost that changes in total in direct proportion to changes in activity or output. It generally includes direct material and direct labor. So we use direct material as our example here. Since direct material is a good example of variable cost. So the cost of direct material will vary in direct proportions to the number of units produced. For example, our company is tasked to make 100 pieces of sala sets. Since the direct labor for sala set is wood, the company needs also 100 logs of trees. So let us assume that every log of trees consists of 1,000 pesos. So the cost of our direct material here will be 100,000 pesos or 100 logs of trees times 1,000. So when we speak of variable cost here, we mean the total cost rises and falls as the activity rises also and falls. Meaning in direct proportion, ang variable cost sa level ng activity, kagaya ng example natin. Kung sakali na mas bababa pa ang gustong i-manufacture ni firm ay bababa rin ang total variable cost natin. For example, they only needed 50 pieces of sala sets. So 50 units times 1,000 only is equals to 50,000. So mas bababa siya ng 50,000 compare sa 100 pieces of sala sets. So we now go to fixed cost. A cost that remains unchanged in total within a relevant range for a given period despite in volume of production. So dito, unlike variable cost, fixed costs are not affected by changes in activity. So kahit na ang activity level will rise or fall, the fixed cost remains constant in total amount. Ito, remains unchanged in total. Ang magandang example nito ay rent expense of a manufacturing firm. So kung halimbawa, ang rent expense nila monthly ay 10,000. So itong fixed cost na 10,000 in total amount ay fixed regardless of number of units na maiproproduce ni firm. To understand more the variable and fixed cost, let us see the following illustration. We define first mixed cost. It is a cost that contains fixed and variable characteristics and elements. For example, sales representatives are often paid a salary plus commission on sales. So, yung fixed dito ay yung salary at yung variable cost naman is commission on sales. So, ito yung cost na parehong merong fixed at merong variable cost. So, sa illustration natin, assume that the variable cost per unit is 2 pesos and the fixed cost or the rent expense is 10,000. So, we first discuss about variable cost. In a level of activity of 50, the variable cost per unit is 2 pesos. So the total variable cost will be 100. In 100 units naman, at a variable cost of 2 pesos per unit is equals to a total cost of 200. So kung ma-observe ninyo, ang total variable cost natin ay tumataas kapag ang level of activity ay tumataas rin. It is because ang total variable cost is in direct proportion sa number of units na iproproduce ni firm. Pero, si variable cost per unit ay same pa rin siya or uniform sa kahit anong level of activity. It is still at 2 pesos per unit. Well, sa fixed cost, at an activity of 50, its fixed cost per unit is 200 with a total fixed cost of 10,000. At 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 sa 100 units naman, the per unit fixed cost is at 100 and still the total fixed cost remains at 10,000. So kung ma-observe ninyo sa ating fixed cost, total fixed cost, still it is 10,000 regardless of the number of activities produced. Pero, ang nag-iiba dito ay yung per unit fixed cost. So, at the level of 50, yung per unit fixed cost is 200. At the level of 100 naman, it is at 100. So the more that we produce, the lesser fixed cost per unit ang magiging kalalabasan. Pero kung lesser naman ang ating number of units produced, mas mahal siya. Mas mahal ang fixed per unit. So, mas mahal na rin ang isang product. We now go to costs classified as to traceability. We have the direct cost and the indirect cost. A direct cost is a cost that is distinctly traceable to a particular cost object. It is also called the traceable cost. Si indirect cost naman, ito yung costs na cannot be traced explicitly to a particular cost object. So yung dalawang ito ay mga self-explanatory na at na-discuss ko na yata ito noong live discussion natin. So we first discuss direct cost. So, direct cost, it may include the direct labor, direct materials, commissions, piece rate wages, and manufacturing supplies. While examples of indirect or costs that cannot be traced in a product, the example will be production supervision salaries, quality control costs, insurance, and depreciation of manufacturing firm or manufacturing building. So, anong mapapansin ninyo sa mga examples na binigay ko? Well, direct costs tends to be a variable cost, kagaya nga ng direct material at direct labor, which which were the examples of direct cost. At sa indirect cost naman, tends to be a fixed or period cost. Fixed like kagaya ng example ko kanina, the production supervisor salaries. And period cost like others na cost na mako-considered as period. For example nga yung selling expense like advertising expense. The next classification is the cost classified to their nature as common cost or joint cost. So joint costs. These are the total of all costs incurred in a joint process up to the split off point. So basically, a joint cost is a cost that is incurred in a joint process. So when we say joint process, it is a production process in which one input yields multiple outputs. This may include direct labor, direct material, and factory overhead. Si common cost naman ay costs or it facilitates services employed in two or more accounting periods, operations, commodities, or services. Common costs are general, not attributable to any department or area of the small business. So in other words, si common cost, it is a shared expense of creating a product or providing a service that cannot be attributed to a single department or user. Next slide. Costs associated with time of incurrence. It consists of historical cost, replacement cost, budgeted cost. So, basahin na lang ninyo ito sa handouts natin. Hindi naman ito kailangan ng too much discussion. We now go to costs based on their financial statement presentation. It consists of an expired cost and expired cost. So when we say an expired cost, it involves cash outlays, the benefits from which extend beyond the accounting period of 1 year. Itong important, it is shown as an asset in the balance sheet. So meaning, si unexpired cost is any cost that has not yet been charged to expense because it represents some residual value. Under sa matching principle ng accounting, ang isang unexpired cost is maintained on the books as an asset until the associated revenue is recognized, at which point the asset is charged to expense. Pero yun ang example natin sa first video, yung from balance sheet or statement of financial position, si inventory ay asset until yung nabenta na siya, pumapasok na siya sa cost of goods sold as an expense. Si expired cost naman, these are costs for which benefits had been received, such as it is shown as an expense in the income statement. Expired cost is a cost that has been recognized as an expense. This happens when an entity fully consumes or receives benefit from a cost, sometimes resulting in the generation of revenue. Ang magandang example nito ay ang depreciation expense. So we all know na ang depreciation expense is somewhat an operating expense from the income statement. Next will be the cost in relation to an accounting period. It it has it or it consists it is consist of capital expenditures and revenue expenditures. Capital expenditures. These are expenditures intended to benefit more than one accounting period, more than one, and is reported as an asset. Capital expenditures, these are payment for goods or services na or recorded or capitalized on the balance sheet instead as expense on the income statement. Examples of which are long-term assets such as the property, plant, and equipment that has a useful life of more than one accounting period. And we all know na ang PPE ay recorded as an asset sa ating balance sheet. Si revenue expenditure naman, this benefits the current period only and is reported as an expense. Bale, ito yung mga cost na ini-expense in the accounting period when the expenditures takes place, meaning they are the expenditures that are expensed outright. Examples of which are the salaries and wages, insurance expense, advertising expense, rent expense, and others. So, these are the other costs na hindi naman gaanong important pero in-include ko pa rin. These are costs in relation to its impact on decision-making and analytical process. This includes relevant cost, opportunity cost, sunk cost, out-pocket costs, differential cost, and the controllable cost. So, you read na lang ito sa ating handouts. And that ends my discussion on cost terms and its classifications.